Welcome to So You're Kinda a Big Deal, a weekly podcast deep diving into the lives of emerging and established tattoo artists. Listen in as we dig into origin stories, industry hot topics, and what it takes to survive in the world of tattooing. This is Tattoo Shop Talk. Join your hosts Shawn, Hedley, and Dave Allen every week as we host a new guest.
It's no secret Dave and I have a good guy connection, but we have a great relationship with many respected suppliers. Working with Lucas Ford at Classic Tattoo, I saw firsthand the blood, sweat, and stress he went through building Good Guy. Creating products for your peers is no easy task. With many to critique any small missteps, including myself, tattooer owned and family operated since day one. With Lucas, Rob, and Natalie at the helm, you know exactly what you are getting. High quality products, fair prices, and excellent customer service. Shop, support, Good Guy.
I used to have a better memory of that concussions. Just I just go blank now sometimes. When I'm talking, I'll be like, what the fuck was I even talking
That happens to me, but I figure it's old age. You know? I'm like, what? What's your name again?
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask, how old are you, Trevor?
63.
Okay, so yeah, you got 12 years, 11 years on me.
And I look younger.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The Australians got jokes. I'll make sure that the subtitles get that good. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, 63.
All right. And then you've been tattooing now how many
Are
years?
we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we are. Yeah. I didn't get that, you know. Like,
Yeah.
so
How many years have you tattooed?
well, I was trying to think about it last night. About 42.
Okay.
About 42 years.
Yeah, 42 years.
Yeah, it was around 80, 81, 82.
Okay.
Started.
And you got started in Melbourne?
In Melbourne. Yeah. Oh, well, actually in the country, not like out in the countryside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was quite the journey back then to get tattooing equipment because nobody would talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And I think in Melbourne back then or in Victoria, the state would have been maybe 5 or 6 shops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you weren't, there was even signs in the shop, don't ask about how to get into tattooing or tattooing equipment. It was pretty serious.
Yeah. That was all a pretty serious thing from not very long ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there was always mystery about like who was in the back room or, like who are these guys dealing with,
Yeah.
So about 80, 81, 82.
So how did you get your start?
Oh boy, here we go.
You've never told this story before, right?
Yeah. Nobody wants to listen. Like back then, right, there was the Easy Rider magazine. I always wanted to be a tattooer, but I'm an electrician by trade.
Okay.
So got my first couple of pay packets, went down to Melbourne, which was a 2-hour train trip to get tattooed, right? And then you're looking at the equipment and you're like, had no idea what I was doing. I'd been looking at. Got the Easy Rider magazine and saw the little ad in the back that you could send off to Sporting and Rogers. So wrote a letter to Sporting and Rogers, can I get a catalogue? Right. They send a form back saying, $5 or whatever for the catalogue.
Oh, my God.
Write the letter back with a bank check or whatever it was back then. So, and all of this takes like months or months. Finally get a catalogue. And then you got this Sporting and Rogers catalogue and you're looking at it going, what do I buy? There's starter kits and things like that. So I ended up getting a couple of machines and forgot to order a power supply. Like very intelligent. So got a couple of colours, power, 2 machines, and the machines come already set up. And they had like Vaseline on the needles and a little plastic or rubber.
Oh, the little orange rubber that
on the thing, right? So I was like looking at it and I'm thinking, I think I went and got tattooed. And I asked the tattooer, I said, well, like, how do you run that machine And he goes, I'm not telling you nothing unless you get tattooed. So I got a $15 tattoo. And it was this little bird right here.
Held up well. Still looks like a bird.
And then he answered a couple of questions, and then that was it. So I went home, and I got a train set transformer because I was an electrician, and I set that up. So I had it sort of figured out.
That was my first setup.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Plug right into the wall and
Yep.
just fucking.
So that's how I pretty much started, and it was a nightmare. You know, like I remember that there was my girlfriend at the time. Her friend, he wanted to get tattooed, and I was just drawing little flowers, and he goes, "I want to get a big one from here to here," and I was like, "I can't even draw a flower." I said, "No." Did a little flower on him, and it was a mess. I got the purple from Sporting Rogers, and it wouldn't go in. I couldn't figure it out, and I think I even forgot. Hey, I forgot to take the Vaseline off the needle.
Vaseline was going in.
So for all those kids that started as backyarders, I was actually one of them. So
Yeah, lots of people. Most of us were.
yeah,
Most of the people we've interviewed, that's been their path, right?
yeah. So and then from there it just sort of progressed a little bit more, and learned a little bit as I went along, and kept getting tattooed. And I got friendly with a couple of tattooists from Melbourne. One in particular was Cindy Ray, who was actually Bev Robinson at the time. And she was really good. She helped me quite a bit. And I saw a national tattoo magazine that she showed me. And there was an article on Ed Hardy in it. And I was like, I just could not believe that somebody could tattoo like that back then. It was pretty insane.
What was the scene like in Australia then?
It was, there was a couple of really good tattooers, but it was very much pretty quiet. You know, there was, like I said, about 6 shops in Melbourne. Around Australia, there was one in Melbourne, a guy called Danny Robinson that was extraordinarily good. He was so good. He was just a naturally gifted artist. But, alcohol and everything else,
Was it mostly flash at the time?
All flash.
Yeah.
All flash, yeah. There was no sleeves or anything like that. There was another guy in Sydney called Tony Cohen. That he was probably the most famous guy because he did a little bit of traveling. And, of course, Bev Robinson, Cindy Ray, she was, the showgirl, become tattooer, married her tattooer. It was, but very much Australian style, like flash. There was, very simple.
Yeah.
So, but it was good, you didn't know any different.
Yeah.
So
How'd you end up in a shop?
So I ended up doing a few tattoos, and one of my customers went down and got tattooed off Danny Robinson, and he mistakenly pointed to a tattoo I'd done that another shop had done, and he said, "Well, tell that guy to come down." So, and I went down there, and I ended up stumbling into this shop and got to work on the weekends. So I was actually driving 100 miles a week on a Friday night to work on a Saturday, and try to get a little bit of experience, So
That's crazy.
yeah, but I mean, I wanted to be a tattooer.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do it, but you had to do that to learn it. There was no internet. There was, no magazines.
I was going to say, were you even getting like the quarterly magazines that were
nothing? No, there was nothing. I mean, it wasn't until a couple of years later that you had to get somebody to sign you up to national, like to sponsor you.
Okay.
To become a member of national, and then you'd get the magazine. So yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, because I guess this would have been even pre-tattoo review.
Yeah.
And
that was
that was
no.
Yeah,
there was National Tattoo Magazine, which was exclusively for tattooers.
Yeah.
And then there was Easy Rider magazine that would show tattoos every now and again.
Yeah.
So for the most part, all the tattoos you're seeing are what you're seeing in person. So you're
seeing
seeing Australian tattoos.
Yeah.
You're not
You're
exposed
not-
to the international.
Exactly. You'd hear somebody getting a tattoo and you'd be like, oh, can I have a look at it? You know, and it was from the same 2 or 3 tattooers back then.
Yeah.
So it was very limited, but I was lucky. I got exposed to good tattoos. You know, like Danny Robinson, like I said, and his son, Danny Jr., they were excellent tattooers. You know, they really were world class. But, you know, the lifestyle sort of didn't help.
Got in the way.
Yeah, I mean, and Bev had actually showed me some tattoos that she'd got from Ed Hardy and Cliff Raven. So
cool.
She'd actually been lucky enough to get tattooed off both of those guys. And so that sort of opens you up to think, wow, you know, like there's some really interesting tattooers and interesting work that can be done. It's not just you're seeing the old school stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sort of progressed a little bit more. And then 82, that sort of all happened within that 1 year. And I was working part-time at a couple of shops every weekend. And I saw this guy called Bob Roberts' stuff in a magazine, again, in the national magazine.
Yeah.
So I decided 1982 I was going to go to the National Tattoo Convention, and it was in Virginia. And I wanted to get tattooed off Ed Hardy. So how do you get in touch with somebody on the other side of the world back then? It was the old dial-up phone, right? You know, had to ring the international operator and say, what time is it in San Francisco to ring this number? And after, like working it all out, which took a little bit of time, I rang Ed Hardy, and I said, I'm coming to the National Tattoo Convention, and he actually put a time aside for me. And because I was coming from Australia, I guess that was a pretty big deal. I was just a green kid, had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I also got in touch with Bob Roberts, and I can't remember if I rang him or Ed Hardy had given me his number. I can't remember how, but Ed was in San Francisco in the private studio, and Bob Roberts was in New York on the Lower East Side. So I did the trip with a friend of mine, a good buddy. We landed in Los Angeles, had no idea where we were or what we were getting into. It was nice and sunny in Los Angeles. We stayed a night there, then got on a plane the next day, and we flew to New York. Got off the plane, I'm wearing a T-shirt and jeans, and it's snowing. It's freezing cold. And everybody's looking at you like, oh, where's these idiots from? And then we were there for a couple of days, had no idea where we were in New York. It was just this big city. We were a couple of country kids, and finally found out where the Lower East Side was, and we made our way down to Bob's studio, and he's like, how did you get here? And we said, we walked. And he's like, you walked through? What? He goes, what do you mean?
I was going to say, the Lower East
Side. And we had no idea. We were just walking through there, and you could see people looking at you. And
T-shirt
yeah. Silly guy. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so we got to Bob's and went upstairs. Bob was really good. He was so good. We had a bit of a chat, and we talked a little bit about tattooing. And he'd just done the dragon back piece on the woman. I can't think of her name, but it was in a couple of magazines, especially in National Magazine, that had popped its head up, and it was insane. I mean, looking at it, and he had the coloured drawing on the wall, and he'd done that the portrait of the old, I think he was an old poet or something.
Okay.
So it was stuff that was just unbelievable. You'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And he showed me an 11 mag, and I was like, what's that? Because we were only using 7 rounds, like a 5-liner and a 7 round.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so he was good enough, and he gave me a few mags to take home with me, right? I didn't have any tunes at home. I didn't get that into a round. So So yeah, I got a tiger off the back on the back of my leg from Bob, which was like at the time was just incredible. You know, to get tattooed off him. And my buddy got a little Mexican, gangster guy on his arm,
cool.
Black and grey. It was so cool. And then we flew to via Las Vegas
To Virginia?
to San Francisco. Oh, we went to the National Convention. That's right.
The Hold Fast Social Club keeps expanding and adding features to make the life of tattooers easier. We just launched a classified section for pros only. Sell your tattoo gear, prints, whatever, in one spot. This is on top of a platform with peer-to-peer vouching, direct connect, a wait list, and geo-searching. Now you can find guest spots or forever homes at studios everywhere. No guessing, no awkward conversations. See what shops or artists have to offer. Mark them as favorites or add yourself to their wait list to let them know you are interested. Hold Fast Social Club keeps adding features to make connecting easy. Pros only, a place where the best of us can elevate each other.
Yeah, I forgot about the National Convention. And I got to meet, that was like when Shotzi Gorman was first. Greg Irons. Ed Hardy was there. There was all these Suzanne Fausner.
Oh shit!
Yeah. There was all these tattooers.
Who was the guy with the tigers? Was he in Detroit or in Chicago?
Oh, that guy's in Chicago, in Illinois.
Oh, really?
Tattooers were characters back then.
Oh, boy, he had that stencil of the dot and the star, and if he lost those, he was stuffed. You know? So,
He probably wasn't at the National Convention.
Yeah, I don't know if he was back then. Yeah.
No.
But yeah, there was some characters there. But yeah, like Greg Irons was there. Shotzi Gorman, like he was. I got to meet him, and he was doing some different work, incredible work back then. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, And then we went from there via Las Vegas to San Francisco and got to meet Ed Hardy, And I remember sitting in his waiting room, and he had the photo albums there, and I was looking, and like you were just like, I can't believe somebody could actually tattoo like that. Yeah. I'd never seen anything. I mean, the realistic. There was. I always remember a picture of a macaw on this guy's chest, and it was like unbelievable. It was like the colors, and I was like, man, how can somebody tattoo that? And Ed come out, and he took us in, and we had a bit of a chat about what I said. Look, I just want a dragon. And he goes, oh, okay, you jump up on the table. He started drawing on me, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I'll be fine, And he drew this dragon. He goes, have a look at it. And I was like, yeah, I guess, All right, that looks good. I was absolutely shitting myself. I was like terrified. And he tattooed it, and he was good. He had a bit of a chat. Wasn't interested in talking about any other tattooers or their styles or anything. Just talk about Ed, and stuff. And Chuck Eldridge was there.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah, he was actually there. So we got to meet Chuck, and we ended up going over to his studio, which was over by Oakland. Somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but yeah. And then back home. And I remember going back home to Australia, and like everybody was like, well, why do you want to go over and get tattooed off the Yanks, And they were like, oh, well, it's good. Look at it. But so that was the first, and that was like within the first year that I started tattooing. I didn't got tattooed, but I was that determined. Yeah, I wanted to go to the best.
Yeah.
Back then. So
was it hard to come back home and tattoo flash off the wall after?
It was hard to tattoo.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the skills to do any of the stuff that you learn along the way, and all you were doing was taking photos, and you kept looking at these photos and thinking, how can I draw that? How can I do that? Because I didn't have those skills.
Yeah.
I was determined, but you had nobody to help you.
Yeah. You didn't know how to reverse engineer it by just looking at it.
Yeah. So it was a bit of a struggle for a long time, because I was working in flash shops and still working as a day job as an electrician, working on the weekends as a tattooer. So, like you were dividing your time and that. And there was none of, like, you weren't thinking about homework, like doing drawings and that. You just, because everything was on the walls at the shops you were at. So, and it was all acetate stencils back then too. So you had to learn to be adaptive, and you couldn't muck up. Your machines had to be running smooth. So there was all these things that were like in your head. Like if your machine was spitting and you had to wipe all the Vaseline off, you'd lose your stencil, So,
Yeah, I did a fucking acetate stencil tattoo maybe 10 years ago. Kid that works for me now, he bought one. I can't remember who was selling some of the Sailor Jerry stuff.
Oh, okay.
The woman, I forget her name right now.
Kate. Oh,
yes, Kate. So Greg, God works for me, he bought some stuff. He was like, will you tattoo this on me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, with the acetate? And I'm like,
did you even know how to put it on?
I did. My sleeves were originally done in acetates, actually. And then, but I messaged Dax and was like, I need like powder. What should I use? And he was like, I just scratch a pencil. So I did. I just fucking shaved a fucking pencil lead and put it on. And and then Greg got pictures of all the stages of it. But fucking nightmare though. Like just nightmare. Like for one, and you're doing them all day for years.
Yeah, but like even that, like you were like, oh, where do you get the graphite from? Send us sporting around. Couldn't figure it out. You could probably get it somewhere. Yeah. But so there's another 2 months waiting for the graphite
chip to come in.
You do the order, and then you'd send it off, and then they'd send you back the pro forma invoice, with the how much it's going to cost and the shipping. Then you have to go to the bank and you explain to the bank, I need a draft for the. Well, okay, US,
Yeah.
Oh, man. And back then, the Australian dollar was stronger than the US dollar. Yeah. So, and you were thinking, this is pretty cheap. How am I doing all this?
Yeah.
It was fun.
Damn, I can't complain about that because I never even thought of that, right? Like all your shit's coming over on a ship, taking forever.
It took forever. And you were so excited about it, but you still didn't know what you were doing with it. There was, and back then there was just a little bottle, and then the shop I was working in, they showed me how to mix the powder.
All right.
So then that become, the next step was learning to mix powder and solder needles, because I was still using those bloody 14 round or 7 round, Oh, it's fun days,
So what was what brought you over to North America, basically? Because to me, that was from what I know of your history, that was a really important.
Well, I did the whole the first trip to see Ed and Bob, and then I progressed my tattooing a bit. And I ended up opening a shop with another guy, and I still had this drive that I wanted to go and meet people at the conventions and take photos and see what was going on, because Australia was very much a closed tattoo shop. Nobody really talked to you that much. And I thought that there's got to be more out there. And I did a couple of I went to I think it was the 85 Phoenix convention, and I'd seen some work by a tattooer called Peter Poulos, Peter Tattoo.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was really taken with his work. And I got to meet him, and I was lucky enough to get tattooed off him. And I didn't know anything about Peter, and I don't know what you guys know about.
I don't know much about him yet.
Okay, well, he was a colourful character. He was one of those guys, but nobody spoke about his background, and I guess he was a bit of a gangster. And all I wanted to do was get tattooed off him. And he tattooed me at the shop, at one of his shops. So he picked me up in the car with a bunch of his guys. So I'm sitting in the back seat in the middle, and they're talking about kidnapping me and taking me to New York and showing me around New York. And I'm like, these guys, are they serious? Because they were serious looking guys. And he took me to one of his shops. And for those that don't know much about Peter, he had a bunch of shops in around Colorado and Phoenix, Arizona. And everybody that worked for him, worked for him. you weren't to leave, and you weren't. But I didn't know any of this stuff, and so he took me to one of his shops and he tattooed me there, and it was a great experience. He was so good. And then I got tattooed off him again on the Sunday at the convention. I had my chest and my leg done from him. And the chest won best tattoo of the day, and it was this skull. He was known for doing skulls.
Gangster.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But he was to me, he was a really nice guy. And I got along, like he treated me real nice. But I was just this green kid, so. So I did that convention and pretty much went back to Australia and then tried emulating his style, which was single needle. And I got to see Jack Rudy stuff at the time. That was just starting to make it, at the convention.
Yeah.
So the next year, I went back and I went through Hawaii and I got tattooed off Candy Everett. And Candy showed me some pictures of some tattoos, and she goes, "You'd probably be interested in these guys." And it was the Dutchman and Paul Jeffries. And she had some actual photos of their work, and I was like, "Oh my God, it was like next level for me." When I looked at it, it was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And I got to meet Mike Malone. He was an interesting character. That he goes, "You want to be a tattooer? Sit in the corner and look at these photo albums." And he just threw these photo albums at me, and some Sailor Jerry stuff. So then I did the whole couple of shops, and I ended up in Anaheim at Jack Rudy's studio, and Jack tattooed my foot. And you know what Jack's like you make an appointment, you better. I didn't know, you better wait. The appointment was like at 7:00. He turned up at 11. I was like, man, this guy's unbelievable. But it was worth the wait. We had it, So I got tattooed off Jack. I'd been tattooed off Bob Roberts, Ed Hardy, Candy Everett. So I was starting to see some incredible work. And then I went back to Australia, kept tattooing, and I wrote to Paul Jeffries. And Paul, I got some flash off him. And Paul was kind enough, he sent me the flash. And then he also, with the flash, he'd always send photographs. So he sent me a bunch of his work. And I thought, oh, this is the guy I want to do my back. So I kept tattooing for a couple of years. Did another trip to the United States. Got some more work from Jack Rudy. Had both my ribs done. Got tattooed off Ed Hardy again. Had both my thighs done and my chest done from Ed. So I was starting to progress, with my own work. Still nothing, it was still pretty ordinary, but learning a little bit more along the way. And then in '89, I decided to quit my job as an electrician. And I was with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And we decided to do a tour of America. We were going to come to America. And while I was here, I was going to come to Canada and get tattooed off Paul Jeffries. I wanted to get my back done. So I landed again at the National Convention in Texas. And Paul was there. And I ran into Paul, introduced myself, and I said, I want to come to Canada and get tattooed off you. I want you to do my back. And we had a couple of drinks, and I was just in awe of him. He was a larger than life character.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah, and he sort of, I think at the time he's just sort of sussing you out. He's just feeling what sort of person you are, right? And then his wife came up to my girlfriend and she goes, "Oh, I guess you guys are coming to Canada." And she goes, "Paul said, we'll probably put you to work." He hadn't seen my work or anything like that. He's just like, "Yeah, you're, And I was like, wow, this could really happen. I was like, nah, not really. So we sort of parted at the convention, went our separate ways, and he'd given me the shop number, and my girlfriend and I, we toured around America, made our way into Canada, and we were in Winnipeg visiting with a couple of guys that we'd met in Hawaii on our way over. And I rang the shop. We'd been there about a week, and I rang the Smile and Buddha, and I said, I'm going to come over. Can I make an appointment to get my back done? And Wink, Paul's wife, said to me, well, if you should come now. We need you now if you want to work. So I was like, this really? So we jumped in the car and we drove all night from Winnipeg to Calgary, and we got there on, I think it was like a Wednesday.
Like 1,100 kilometers or something.
Is that right? Yeah, it was. Yeah, we drove. I think I don't think we stopped, but like for an overnight. And we got there, and because they said they needed somebody. And I remember we got into Paul's house. Wink was there to meet us, and for those, Wink was Paul's wife, and she'd come home early from the shop. Paul was still at the shop. She said, you may as well stay here for a couple of nights till you get yourself sorted. And then Paul come home, and it was straight down to the bar. And let's do it, so we were drinking. And I guess he's still doing that feeling out, and seeing what sort of person. So I'm trying not to get drunk. And he's kept pouring beers.
He's trying to get you drunk.
He's trying to get you drunk. Because I found out later, he always said, you get somebody drunk and you find out what sort of person they are. So, And then the next morning I went to the shop, and he put me straight to work. The shop opened at 12. He set me up. And it was just all small stuff with Paul, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't even know him.
Yeah.
And it was in the small walk-in shop where there was Kenny Cameron was there. I met Kenny the night before, and there was Kenny, myself, and then there was a wall with a cutout in it, and Paul was on the other side of the wall, And I had my machines from Australia. And they were loud. And Paul's like, put a muffler on those things. So I had no idea. He looked at my machines, and straight away we ordered a couple of machines from Colonel Todd.
Yeah. 3-piece.
Yeah, the old 3-piece machines, right? Yeah. So I ended up staying there, and I ended up being there for 2 years with Paul.
Wow.
It was quite. So we did the transition from that shop into the big shop. When he bought the building, so I was there for all of that. We got an apartment when we were there. We lived right upstairs from the old shop.
Okay.
His friends all helped us out with furniture. And
so was that basically your first full time?
Full time. That was my first full time. I was actually working as a full time tattooer.
Wow.
Yeah.
In a foreign country.
In a foreign country with a god of tattooing. Like this larger than life character.
Yeah.
So we started, and it just become this whole new lifestyle, because with Paul it was like you work hard during the day, and then you go and drink and have meals, and so he introduced me to this whole different lifestyle, me and my girlfriend. And on the weekends it was like first come first serve, like I think James was saying, and it was an interesting time. It was terrifying. For a young, like back then.
I can imagine. And it would have been rough, too, because that Calgary back then there's a lot of biker wars going on. And
I didn't know any of that.
Was that before your time?
Might have been before. I think there was, I remember that in Australia, you'd do a lot of Grim Reapers. And when you got to the shop in Calgary, you were like, no Grim Reapers. And I was like, why? You don't have any Grim Reapers. Why don't you do them? And it was the local bike club. The Outlaw Club was there, the Reapers, so you weren't allowed to do Grim Reapers. I was like, okay, it's interesting. I'd never been exposed to any of that. So you'd heard, like, I was from the country in Australia, like, where there was no bike clubs back then. They were the Hells Angels were in Melbourne, but they were like mystique. You didn't. So. Yeah, it was interesting.
So when you left Paul's and went home, is that when you opened Dynamic?
Yeah. So when I was with Paul, the one thing with Paul, he not only taught you to tattoo, but he taught you business sense, right? And he helped you with your, like the tattoo, his way. It was like a business
Yeah.
way
That's
he
one
did
thing
it.
that Brett Schwinn always said to me too.
Yeah.
That Paul taught him a lot of stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, like the morals, the tattoo morals, like he wouldn't tattoo hands or necks and things like that.
Why not? What's wrong with that?
They look like idiots.
That was just Paul's way, and you just had this respect, But while I was at Paul's too, I was also further exposed to John out in Vancouver. So, I remember a couple of his customers had come through the shop. There was a guy, Terry. He was a kickboxer. He had the tiger on his chest, the full tiger. Yeah, and I got to meet him. And he had a full back from John that was the warrior on the horse.
Oh, Jesus, that tattoo was insane.
Yeah, and you're just in awe. You're like, man, this just keeps getting better. Here I am working with Paul and seeing what he's doing and how he's doing it. But now I'm getting exposed to John's work. And there was a time when I went out to Vancouver and got to hang out with John. And that opened doors, because with Paul, that opened the door to John's studio. And you started to realize that by working with people like Paul's stature, that you were more accepted when you went to visit people.
Yeah.
So at the time we were working for Paul in the winter, the start of the winter, my girlfriend and I decided to go to Europe. So we went to Europe. And as soon as you mentioned that you were working with Paul Jeffries, it was incredible that, that these doors opened up and people wanted to talk to you. And we did a tour of Europe and we ended up at the first Amsterdam convention. Yeah. And that was a really interesting thing because there was this kid that, I think his name was Philip Lou. Have you guys heard of him? Right. But there's this whole backstory that we didn't know about Philip and John.
Yeah.
Right? And we were so I wanted to go and see this guy, Philip Lou, and look at his work and all these European artists. And you were told, no, you're with us on the North American side, because there was this thing with Hardy and John and Philip. But no, you don't go, don't associate with them, you're on this side. So it was kind of weird. Yeah. Don't want to get into the backstory.
No.
Yeah. No.
But
it's like high school cafeteria, man. All the little groups breaking off.
Yeah, there was all these cliques and things like that, So, but yeah, so we did that convention and it was incredible to see Philip working, because I just said, well, I'm going to go over there and see him work.
Yeah.
Was Dave Short that convention?
Yes. Yeah.
Was he sharing a booth with Paul or was it with John or?
I think he was with Hanky Panky.
Okay, he was living in Amsterdam.
Oh, that would have been the first one that he would have been living over there.
Yeah, so you had Dave Shaw, and it was kind of awkward. It was just very awkward. But it was good exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a fun time.
And what was going on in Europe was totally different than what was going on in North America for the most part.
Yeah.
Guys like Bernie Luther and...
Well, I was lucky enough to see Bernie Luther at the '89 convention and see his stuff. He was just drawing. It was an incredible. This kid from Europe looked like he hadn't had a bath for a couple of months, but he was doing these tattoos, and it was incredible. Just drawing them on, no preparation. Who does that? Yeah. The only other person I'd seen do that was Ed Hardy. So that's when the Europeans started coming in to North America, the conventions and making a big mark, so to speak.
Yeah.
So going back to Paul's, working another summer, and in that time got to go to John's, and I was lucky enough to stay with John at his house and spend just a weekend with him, and he was incredible. He wrote notes down, and we talked about tattoos. He critiqued the work that I was doing, and I was still the small stuff. And I think I was telling you guys before, and I was talking to James about it. When you started with Paul, it was the small stuff. So you started with the maple leaves, the small roses, the butterflies, and as you got a bit better, you graduated to the eagles. And when you were allowed to do a tiger, you knew you'd made it. But I remember the first time I was allowed to do a tiger. I remember Paul's wife coming in with a big smile on her face and putting this tiger down, saying, "Paul said you could do a tiger now," and I was, oh.
I'm going out for fucking steak today.
Yeah. And I think I bought him the steak. But I bought him a lot of meals and never got much in return. So that was pretty much the journey. And then I remember having a conversation with Paul, and I don't know how serious he was, but he said to me and my girlfriend, "What about if I opened up a shop in Edmonton? Would you be interested in running it?" And I was like, "Oh, that's I don't know about that." We were sort of getting a little bit homesick, and I said, "Look, I don't think so. I don't think that'd work. I think we're thinking about going back to Australia." And he said to me then, he goes, "Well, look, if you're going to go back to Australia," and we sat down and we had a chat about it, and he said, "You can't tattoo in a country town. You've got to move to the city and make a name for yourself." So that sort of always resonated with me, how he took the time to do that. And we went through a few steps of what I should do and how I should set up the shop. And it was interesting. So
that's amazing, because a lot of people wouldn't take the time to help you set up your next shop, because usually you'd be moving across.
But I was no threat to him. I wasn't opening up in a shop, a shop in his town or anywhere near him. So so then we come back to Australia. That was end of 91. And my girlfriend and I, we got married. No, the end of 90. I apologize. At the end of 90. And we got married at the start of 91, and we opened up a dynamic tattoo. We'd moved from the country down to Melbourne, and I opened up a little shop, pretty much like Paul's first shop. It was 2 stations, a waiting room. The toilet was outside. It was behind a barber shop, a hairdresser's, and had no idea how this was going to go, because again, there was probably 6 shops in Melbourne, 6 or 7 shops, and I was this new guy coming in, and no advertising or anything like that. But it didn't take long for word to get around, and I sort of set the standard straight away, like no drinking in the shop, no alcohol, or and setting hours. Working between now and, like say, 11 and 6. Yeah.
It cuts down a lot of problems right there.
Yeah. And I remember, we hadn't been open long, and people were turning up with, like 24 pack of beer under their arm. Like, "What are you doing? You can't drink here." "Why not? I can drink at the shop up the road." Like, "No, not here." So I tried to keep it very professional, like Paul, right from the word go, what Paul had instilled in me. So, and dynamic tattoo kicked off in 91. So yeah,
that's incredible. So it's been, what is that? How many years?
30.
30, yeah.
Yeah,
33.
32, almost 33, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So had several guys work with me at the first few years of dynamic tattoo. And the thing that I wanted to do was have good people work with me. No apprentices, just people that had been tattooing for a while, and bring them in and help them. So I had a young guy that had approached me, Mick Hayes, and he approached me and wanted to come from another shop and work with me. So, spent some time with him, went through the drill, because, they weren't used to that sort of regimented style of tattooing. Helped him out with his tattooing. Not that I was still learning, and bringing him in, it freed me up to go back to Canada and come here. I was doing when the Stampede was on. So I'd come back and work with Paul for 4 weeks or whatever and help him out, because it was the busiest time.
Yeah.
So again, and then you would get your style refined and things like that. So bringing people in, it was good. I could help them and they could help me at the same time. So did that for a few years, backwards and forwards with Paul. And then, I was doing a few conventions along the way, again in North America, and then started doing, I met this kid, this young guy called, what's his name? Fucking Henning Jorgensen?
Jorgensen or something?
Yeah. So I met Henning, and I think Henning had written me a letter, and he was like, "Oh, you're working with Paul Jeffries." He goes, "What's that like?" And so I met Henning in at one of the conventions. And straight away, I could tell that Henning, there was this rivalry. He was a bit jealous that I was actually working with Paul. But we sort of struck up a friendship, and we kept in touch, and we started doing quite a few conventions together. So back in them days, it was Henning and Trevor, right? And that relationship, flourished, and, we became really good friends. And Henning, he ended up coming to Australia in, I think it was 96, and he got married over there in Australia. And I was his best man, and my wife, she was the bridesmaid, and my kids were the flower kids, and we were the page boy. And so our friendship had really, was quite good. And then we would go to conventions together. And this is something that I was talking last night to some of the guys that are in the background over here. Like, we would go to the conventions, and we would tag team with the camera. So I would take the camera and photograph, a bunch of tattoos, and while Henning was working, and then I'd tattoo, and Henning would run off and take a bunch of photographs. So at the end of the convention, we would take all the photographs that we'd get developed, and we'd get double copies. And then we'd get together and we'd swap the photos. So it was like Philip Lou's work, Ed Hardy's work, Eddie Deutsch at the time, Guy Atchison, so we had this, all these photos.
Yeah.
So that's how we sort of, you'd learn, you'd sit down and you'd had all these photos to study, because there was still only a couple of magazines.
Yeah, and not all that stuff was going to make the magazine.
No. We had like you look back through the photo albums now, and you've got some classics, some gold. That there was, and it was interesting because a lot of people didn't want to show their tattoos off, but they knew they sort of opened up to you and they'd let you photograph them.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting time working, that time, and Henning and I would do that for a number of years. And that sort of helped progress Dynamic back home, and then I started to get such a really steady clientele of people wanting sleeves, and I was probably the first guy to start doing sleeves in Australia.
So were you the first shop doing custom tattoos?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I'd say yeah, for sure. This is the way it is, and I bought all that Paul had taught me over, and then the homework started, And I was lucky. I had a great wife, and she understood, because she'd lived it with me with Paul, and she knew what was going on. So she didn't mind me going off and doing conventions, and we'd had a couple of kids by then, so she'd stay home and look after the kids. And Henning and I'd meet up every year, and we'd do a convention or two. And
amazing.
Yeah, so Dynamic was progressing. I had a couple of different artists there. And one of them went on and opened up his own studio, Mick, and then I had another guy, Owen. And Dynamic, it become this big thing where I had a lot of people traveling, which was unheard of in Australia, traveling to get tattooed. And I wanted to expand Dynamic, so I went and had a look around further in the city, so closer to the centre of the city.
Yeah.
And my shop was probably 40 minutes out of the city, kind of like in Calgary here, like sort of
like James here out in the boonies.
Yeah, a little bit further out. But yeah, it was. So I wanted to attract more customers, but I also wanted to have more people work for me. And so I moved into the city and expanded Dynamic in about 2005. I think it was.
Yeah.
So by then, I'd sort of slowed down a little bit on the conventions, but I was still traveling, doing a few. And then just a little bit before that, I'd got some photos from Henning, and he'd started dating Mike Rubendahl back then. He'd left me.
Wait, what?
no.
So Henning and my relationship started to get a little rocky.
That's amazing.
So then he started dating Mike, you know, and
Trade you in for a younger
he
model.
traded me in for exactly right. Better looking model, you know, like. So, and for those these younger kids today, you know, like you'd always see Henning and I. We were known as like these two guys that would get around the conventions together, and then all of a sudden people started going, "Oh, you're not with Henning? Well, I've seen Henning with Mike." Yeah, he's cheating on me. So Henning had sent me some photos from. He'd taken some photos of this guy's arm in, I think it was Los Angeles, and he sent him. He goes, "Oh man," he goes, "check this guy's work out." And it was a guy called Mike Roper. And I was like, well, this guy's work's pretty unbelievable. So again, I was always determined. I was always wanting to meet better tattooers and get to know them and that. So I wrote Mike a letter and introduced myself, and he was kind enough to send me some photos back. And this was around 2000, and so I ended up ringing him, and I said, I'm coming over to do the Chicago Tattoo Convention. I think it was at Tattoo the Earth back then. I think it was Paul Booth, and I think it was his convention, Tattoo the Earth. So it was in Chicago one weekend, and the next weekend it was in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up, Mike said, yeah, come out, that's fine. You know, I just jumped on a plane, went to Arizona, and met Mike Roper, and that was the start of another incredible journey. Because his work at the time, he was very much underground. Magazines were starting to make their appearance. The internet, I think it was, what was the one before? MySpace, right? Yeah. But he didn't believe in any of that stuff.
He still doesn't.
He still doesn't, but he was great. I didn't think he knew who I was, but he definitely heard of me, and he welcomed me into his house, and I spent a few days with him there, and I was lucky enough, I wanted to get my forearms tattooed off him, and it was different, because Mike was at that stage, he'd work from midnight to 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, because it was so hot in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
So he'd work nights, and he was a night owl. He'd sleep all day. I was getting up at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm sit around all day waiting for him to get up at 2 o'clock. So that started, my friendship with Mike, and he was the other guy that really helped me. He refined me. He was good. He'd sit down with you, and we'd sketch and draw. And
I just like how you and Henning just replace each other with a mic.
yeah, it's true. Actually, funny story.
Yeah, you got a mic?
And the funny story is, Henning and I caught up a couple of years ago, and he goes, "Oh, you were with your mic, and I was with my mic." And I was like, weird, yeah. But yeah, it's true though. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with Mike. I'd actually go back every year and do a convention and hang out with Mike Roper, and I ended up getting a lot of work from Mike as well. So I've always been. I'm not a naturally gifted artist. I'm not that guy. I'm not like James or Steve Moore or any of those crazy guys that are going to do like Eddie Deutsch or Guy Aitchison. So I always relied on looking at other people's work, and that was hence why I was always taking the photographs and looking and trying to learn. And Paul had sort of showed me that too. He said, you're not going to learn everything from me. Take all the books and look at the photos. And, that's where it all started. I was allowed to photograph Paul's customers. So that sort of progressed, and I was lucky enough to have photographs of a lot of people's work.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mike Roper. Then I got him. Was lucky enough to have him. Show me a lot of work, and that I still talk to Mike a lot. And
So have you ever had an apprentice? Like from
Never
the
had an
ground up?
apprentice,
So
no.
more just mentored some
Yeah,
guys
just
or
mentor.
in?
I kind of liked that, but there was two reasons for it. Was an apprentice, you've got to put a lot of time into them and help them. Whereas if you had somebody that had been tattooing for a couple of years and you took them on, at least they were earning their keep.
Yeah, totally.
So they were earning money, and they were paying you while you were teaching them and refining them. Probably, I've been lucky enough to work with guys in Australia that have all the people that have worked with me have all gone on to be better tattooers. I'll be honest and say that, I'm pretty proud of myself that there's some really good tattooers out there that have come through Dynamic.
Awesome.
So.
How long you've had your shop? We said 33 years now. I can imagine the changes you've seen in the industry. Like we were talking earlier about how things are changing right now in tattooing, but in that span.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the internet.
Obviously, I think that's the big one, but just a saturation of artists and stuff like that. Like the business side of things is changing, obviously.
Yeah, I think though, if you go back to when the late 90s, tattooing started to kick off, right? It was the Tattoo International magazines, and there was Mickey Violetta's magazines that were coming out, Tattoo Life, and that coming out of Europe. So that spurred a lot of new tattooers. And then you had the likes of Eddie Deutsch and Guy Atchison, Aaron Kane, that were doing, they were innovators.
Yeah.
San Francisco was the hub of the best tattooers in the world.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Right. But there was this unknown quantity that was north of the border that people, you guys up here in Canada were very much under the radar, and there was a lot of good tattooers up here that, we spoke about before. And that sort of spurred a lot of new tattooers, all those guys, So, there's a saturation now, but if you were an older guy back then and you thought there was a saturation then. So you were looking and going, wow, it's all these new young tattooers.
Oh my God, there's 10 tattooers in my city.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, fuck, I got 10 tattooers in my shop.
Yeah. And then you had the next generation then after that was like grime, and there was still this, like Roper was making waves, but he underground.
So underground.
Yeah, and I still think that he was one of the best tattooers around. And I was exposed to his work and got to see it firsthand. And that's the sad part, is that people, weren't exposed to it on how good this guy was.
Absolutely.
He was, incredible.
Yeah.
For that time of what he was doing, and he was a guy that he was so good, but really sort of doubted himself. It was a great time.
Yeah.
And, of course, then you start to see the next generation of people come through. And along the way, there's the progression of the people that have already been there, like Philip Liu, Mick from Zurich. Yeah. The Europeans were starting to make their names. Yeah. So I was lucky. I mean, I'm blessed that I've actually come from down here and gone to see all the progression of these guys. And the one thing about working in Canada and working with Paul, it opened my name up to a lot of tattooers up this end, and I remember we did the 2000 convention, Dave, with Rob. Was it?
At the 2003?
2003.
Yeah.
The Vancouver convention. I got invited to come over and do that, and Paul and John were there. But there was this whole new level of tattooers that I hadn't actually been exposed to then in Canada. And like young kids standing over there, Dave C. I got to meet him, and
can't see you, Dave.
Steve.
He's waving at us.
There was just a hand come over the bench.
Our camera only catches anything over 4 feet anyway.
For those of you that don't know Dave C, he's this tall.
Cast a long shadow.
Yeah. Steve Moore was another one. I got to meet Steve. And, like, boy, there was some incredible, people around that. Were you with the?
I was at the first one, yeah, but I was an apprentice.
You were an apprentice.
I was working a counter.
Yeah, we probably just.
Yeah, you would have pushed me aside to talk to Steve.
So yeah, like it's so. Yeah, there's the progression. It was incredible. Just, everything was starting to open up, and the internet, obviously, and then you were going from mixing your colours and making your needles. Then all of a sudden you could buy everything.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to spend all those hours and burning your fingers,
Sucking up flux.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah,
That was
good.
good.
It's in there.
It's a taste on my tongue.
I made needles not even a year ago because I still show people how to make needles.
Yeah, I still mix color.
Yeah. So I just
Yeah.
gave Ryan Gagne actually a liter of white yesterday. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
National one?
Yeah.
Oh, can you give me some? So,
I'll see how much powder I have left. I did a big order. I didn't know they were shutting down.
Yeah.
I also didn't know that Canada had just changed the rules, actually. So
really?
even before they shut down, we could no longer get any powder across the border.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because of labeling issues.
Oh.
So, and then, so I just did a huge order, fucking big case showed up. And then like 3 months later, my buddy Len that makes ink also, he messaged me freaking out. He's like, we can't get national anymore. They won't ship it across the border because of labeling issues. No French, no this, no that, and everything. And then 3 months later, they were gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I only just heard that they were closing down, but I had a bit of a stock, and a couple of the guys at the shop, wanted to mix color, so I was, still teaching them how to mix it, and it's still fun. Yeah, it is. It is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I pretty much just use Phil Holt's stuff that I mix and a little bit of this.
I remember going back to when I first got tattooed off Ed Hardy, and he was good enough. He told me his mixture of what he used to mix his powders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was because he had them. He bought out these big jars, and he'd had it all pre-mixed, and obviously, and he was filling up his colours while I was there. And I said, "Oh, what do you mix?" He told me. I was no threat to him. I was
you're going back to Australia.
Yeah. So, and he actually told me, I remember him telling me at the time that he was actually getting his yellow and orange from Australia back then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was getting it from a tattooer in Sydney. But, yeah.
Who was probably getting it from DuPont in America.
Yeah.
I don't know where it was, but like I've still got it. The orange in the back of my leg is still bright as ever. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like a few years ago now, I just mixed the last of my Mickey Sharp's blue powder that I'd had wrapped up since 97.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like that was, through the 90s, there was that whole Mickey Sharp started up with the machines and the pigment.
Yeah.
So all these, there was started to be all these supply companies started coming together. Like you could order off Phil Fairweather down in Texas.
Yep. Oh, that was a nightmare though, but it was good.
His powder, like I think John was getting his powder from there.
He was good. He was just hard to deal with sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd ordered off him a few times, didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
And then the European guys started opening up. There was a couple over there. Lionel Titchener, these needles.
Okay.
Yeah. Mickey Sharps.
Yeah.
So things started.
Now supply company.
Yeah.
They have them in their tattoo shops.
Yeah. But we're just looking over here at James Tech. So.
Hedley Tattoo Supply. This episode brought to you by Good Guy Supply.
Oh.
The good.
James was talking about how he was angry and he liked fighting.
So does Shawn.
And he's drinking.
But we know he's got a bum knee.
He probably got that bum knee because the first time I met James was in Montreal. Quebec City. And James was, let's just say, quite drunk.
He has to be in public.
I've still got the video, James, so don't look at that. Of you and Dave fighting out on the street, pretending you're like some sort of kung fu expert. No, that was great. I got to meet James in Quebec City about maybe 10 years ago.
2014.
2014.
Nice.
Yeah. So getting to meet him, that was great. He's amazing.
And you keep coming back to Canada.
I love Canada. And I think we were talking before. I think this is the artists here are incredible. I think pound for pound, like however you want to say it, I think Canada's probably got the best tattooers in the world overall.
It was great getting to know Curly and this amazing guy that tattooed with one arm. The customer had to stretch his own skin.
So I did get blood poisoning from him twice. Yeah, twice.
Ed Hardy brought this whole Japanese influence into American tattooing.
Once Dave Shore come onto the scene, it was like tattooing completely changed.
If anybody could say anything about greaseball Japanese, it's fucking Dave Shore.
Salty, piratey, bikery, just hard not to do.
Man, he'd pull in on his chopper with the tattoos and the girls, and I mean, he was just like so cool, man.
He captured vulgarity and pleasure and insanity and recklessness.
Tattoo in the 80s or 70s, just not the same, you had to be a tough guy.
I was scared shitless. Even though I was kind of a biker guy, these were bigger biker guys,
I'm not totally sure you could paint the picture accurately to somebody now getting into tattooing about what it was like then. And the only reason I would say, or I feel that way, though, is because they might not believe you.
We had the limo waiting for him with all the lines of blow lined up at the airport. This is the way we do it in Canada.
In like 80s, 90s, Paul Jeffries was like the king of tattooing. It wasn't just in Canada.
Like, am I supposed to stop tattooing? Because if this is what I'm supposed to aspire to, it's not gonna happen.
Each one of these old masters influenced groups of tattooers, who in turn influenced other groups of tattooers.
Not just because
it's not what you're carrying, James.
You roll off the names, James, Steve, Rob Noseworthy, Rob Hope, Dutchman, Paul Jeffries.
Yeah. Dave Cummins.
Dave Cummins.
Yeah.
We'll get to Dave. We'll get to him.
We can keep his ego in check.
Well, then it was Mike Roper. Now it's Dave, I've moved on to Dave, smaller, compact, easier to carry around. There's been a lot of changes, but just in the work in general too, really, when you look at Hardy's first. In the late 70s, early 80s, the work that he was doing. And then you look at what the really good artists are doing now. It's a big jump, but it's in the scheme of things, it's not that huge. It's just, I think you got more accessibility now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And more creativity.
Yeah.
I think the customers are more open. I mean, like Hardy's customers were very much open to creativity. He pushed that.
Mm-hmm.
He pushed that. And his customers, they loved it, And I remember him telling me, he had a lot of gay men customers that were really open to getting big work and whatever he wanted. He brought that whole Japanese philosophy over, where I'm the artist, I'll help you get what you want.
Yeah,
I think this is what you should get. So and so now, the people that are, like the top of the line artists, they've sort of built on that, and you got, the freedom to express themselves on purpose. People, are traveling just as much to, to see the guys like Steve Moore, James, and that.
In the in the 90s, being in Canada, I used to always say, like, most of us are only as good as our reference that we have accessibility to. And that's why I think such a growth has happened, because accessibility is just fucking those hard to find reference photos. They're not hard to find.
Well, and you used to have, like, say, let's use Grime, like we were talking earlier. You might have 3 photos of his work, and you try to base your own work off those 3 photos. Whereas now you can have everything he's done in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So your reference material is so much.
But even so, right, even with everything that's out there and that, going back to Grime, he doesn't allow a lot of exposure. He controls what you see.
Yeah, for sure.
The book. I mean, I remember I was working at Seventh Son, and Grime was there, and I said, "Oh, do you mind if I take a photograph?" And that, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not really comfortable." And he goes, "If you take a photo, don't show anybody." So he sort of controlled everything. He was like that.
Yeah.
And Mike was like that too. Like kind of, like he didn't put his work out there. So it's kind of nice that you've got these guys that are controlling what they're doing, and then you've got other people that want to expose their work as much as they can.
There's an Edmonton tattooer like that. He's just fucking just pumping out bodysuits.
Really?
Of beautiful Japanese stuff. No photos, no IG.
Really?
And you just don't fucking see it. But he's showing me his work that he has by Roper, and I'm just like,
oh, who's
Steve Batt? Right? It's like most people don't even know who he is, and fuck, that guy is just nonstop pumping out just huge scale work.
Crazy in an industry in a time where exposure seems to be what you need to advance your career. And there's a perfect example of another guy who's taking the exact opposite road and having a really rich career. I mean, the word of mouth, the word speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
But I think the people that are actually going to this, but are the people that are doing their research and they want something different. Yeah. They don't want to be part of that mainstream exposure.
Yeah.
So
I think when you see work that good too, it fucking hits you in the head. Like when you see it in person, you're like a bodysuit on somebody. It's like, that's what I want to go there.
Yeah. There's another guy like even Dave over there from Montreal. Dave Cummins. His work is incredible. And he's such. I didn't realize how big a name he was within Canada, especially amongst the tattooers. Huge.
Yeah. And prolific.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Is some of these guys are the amount of work they put out and large scale work.
The body of work. Yeah.
When I was an apprentice, Dave came and did a guest spot at Sacred Heart, and he brought his portfolios. I'd never seen work like that before, and how much. And that was 20 plus years ago.
And I think Dave, I don't know, he might mind me saying this, but
he's over there like, what are you talking about, Sam?
Dave's hiding over there,
behind everybody else.
He kind of reminded me of myself. He just had this drive to get better, and he wanted to meet all these tattooers. He's at this level already, but he's wanting to get better.
Yeah,
and it's really good to see.
Yeah,
and I like actually having those people around you.
Yeah.
Well, going and working in the 90s in Montreal, he was always going down to New York, always going to Austin.
To see Chris, you know what I mean?
And I hadn't met anybody who traveled that like that. You know what I mean? So I'd go from Vancouver to Montreal. That was my big thing. And he's fucking going everywhere, working all these people.
Yeah, and it's good. You're starting to see people like going back to the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. People were starting to really travel to get tattooed, more so than ever.
Yeah.
So we talk about overexposure now. I mean, and saturation. Like back then, we all thought that it was saturated. It was a saturated market. So, it depends on which generation you're in.
Yeah, it's all perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So right now, it's well and truly
be good enough, and you're going to have customers travel to
true.
You, right? You're not going to rely on your small pool.
Yeah, everything's getting diluted. So but there'll always be customers for the good tattooers.
Absolutely,
I think.
Yeah. Depends how you qualify good tattooers.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different. Well, you know, everyone's like we all look at things differently. I mean, like,
yeah. You treat your customers well, and you do. Yeah, the tattoos, you'll always be there.
For sure, you know, and that goes right back to I think watching Paul, the way he treated the customers, interacted with them, and we've always tried to do that. That was something I always tried to instill back at Dynamic. You know, like have a joke with you always had your bad days, you know, or your off customers or whatever. Yeah. You know, you could never be perfect all the time.
Yeah,
we're all humans, so. But yeah. So.
Customer service is always a really big thing.
Customer service.
I'm adjacent to Paul through my mentor, and then getting to know a little bit more about Paul, I'm realizing like, oh, that's where my mentor would have brought that from.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a big influence on a lot of, So,
top 5 tattooers.
Oh, here we go. Top 5 tattooers. There we go. Everybody stop and look. All right.
Come on back.
Well, at the moment, I would say the number one tattooer for me that I look up to and admire the most would be Chris Garver.
Yeah. That's the first time
I think he's the most rounded tattooer that I've ever seen or met. Yeah. He can do anything.
Yes.
He could go from doing a portrait, you know, to a girl's face, which it's incredibly hard to do.
He's so refined.
Yeah. You know,
and his proportions are classical too.
Perfect.
They're not like tweaked out or new school. They're always like a classical proportion.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
It's natural.
So he would be the number one tattooer for me in the world, I think. Obviously, the next one would be like Mike Roper. He's, for me personally, I think he's an incredible tattooer, you know, and he's such a talented guy that just lacked the exposure. But that's his own doing.
By design.
By design.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul Jeffries, unfortunately, just retired. Well, good luck to him, you know.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
First tattooer to actually try and
the thing is, with Paul's stuff, it's like, it's timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything a tattoo should be.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of, probably not the kids today or the people today, because they're thinking of that fine line and stuff. But anyway, but a tattoo should look like what Paul does. So, you know, like Chris, Mike, Paul, Philip Lou's got to be in there. You know, he's been such an innovator, still doing incredible work. I just saw a back piece he'd done in 10 hours the other day. You know, and it was flawless.
Yeah.
One more.
And the rest suck.
Yeah. Everybody you don't mention is fucking garbage. And we're tagging them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, at everyone.
You know, like, oh boy. A fifth one for me, I don't know, there's so many on that same level. You know, Mick from Zurich.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, Dave.
Hear that, Henning?
This is someone more from your era, but someone I looked up to, and no one ever talks about them, was Maurizio from Brazil. Do you have any exposure with him?
I had all his flash. And I actually still follow his work, you know. Yeah, Mauricio Junior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel Novus from Rio de Janeiro. He's one that is incredible. I was lucky enough, he come over and spent 3 weeks with me at my shop. And I was exposed. He's an incredible tattooer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's his Instagram?
I think it's Novus Daniel.
Novus Daniel.
Yeah, so it's Novais Daniel, I think. Super incredible. Yeah, clean, innovative,
fun,
really good. Yeah, loves. He's a good musician. He plays drums in like a jazz band.
Oh, cool.
Really, really talented. There's all those just South American guys.
Yeah,
very talented. But those would be the top 3 for me in South America. You know, especially like Junior, his creativity. Wow.
Do you like anybody on your little island?
In Australia, yeah, there's a few. Yeah. The one guy, he actually come to me as a raw, shitty tattooer, and is probably one of the best in Australia, I would say at the moment, is Evan Griffiths. Griff Tattoo.
Yeah, totally.
He's well, I wouldn't call him a heavyweight. He was a typical guy that he come to me, he had no ego or nothing like that. But I looked at him and he was that guy that I was, and I could see it, and I was like, man. And what really struck me with him was he wanted to travel and get tattooed. He wanted to get tattooed off Guy Atchison, and he did all of that. He went out there and did he sorted it all out. And he wasn't even a great artist, but he's worked extremely hard. He just put out that sketchbook, Griff Tats, he's one I would be super proud of. I'd say, he's the guy. We don't see a lot of each other anymore. He's got a shop across town. Just life gets in the way. But but his work's super, super incredible. Yeah, takes a lot of inspiration from Mick. I know the funny story was he come to me when he was working with me, and he goes, "I want to go to Europe. I want to go and do the Milan convention." And I was like, "Oh, well, you should do it. That'd be great." And he goes, "I want to go and get tattooed off Mick." And I was like, "Wow, yeah, well,
good luck."
Good luck. And he goes, "Wow, and we had a bit of a chat about it." And he said, "Do you want, I think I said, well, I'll come with you to Milan, if you want." And I got in touch with Mick and I said, "Look, I got this kid wants to come and I want to come and visit you, but he wants to come and get tattooed off you." And Mick said, yeah, come. And I said, "Well, what about accommodation?" And he goes, "No, you're going to be staying with me." So I went back to Evan and I said, "Well, guess what? Not only are you going to meet Mick, you're going to get to stay with him for 5 days. We'll go and get tattooed off him and that." He nearly wet his pants. He'll kill me for that.
Well, you come stay with you, right? Joel Martin,
yeah. I've had a few. Yeah, Joel come over and stayed.
I remember when he told me that, I was like, how the fuck did you make that happen? He's like, "I called."
I actually had a lot of tattooers come and stay with me. Then, I always had a warm reception from tattooers around the world. I wanted to give them a good experience,
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of tattooers stay at the house. Half the time you forget.
Yeah.
So but Joel was super nice, I'd say Evan, in Australia. Man, there's a whole bunch of guys that I don't even know their names. I've got a guy work with me, Joel Ang.
Oh,
there we go. So
yeah,
I'm lucky enough to have him working with me, and he's like a Philip clone, super talented. I've got another guy, Ross Byfield, and he's like a Mike, very much underground. Can do anything. Can do a neo-trad portrait, do a full body suit, goes under the radar. He just. He's another one, and I really admire the crew I've got now. I really admire them a lot.
How many guys you got?
I've got 5 with me now.
Okay. Yeah. You're working just as straight custom. Is it a semi-private shop?
No, it's a street shop.
Yeah.
It's a full street shop.
Yeah. Still taking walk-ins.
Still taking walk-ins.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Still working 5-6 days a week. Got to pay the bills, and especially after COVID, that really stuffed everything up. So. But yeah, I love tattooing.
Yeah.
I just don't like what it's become.
Yeah.
I love the art of it. I love, the interaction with most of the customers. There's things have changed a little bit, but
I love the carny aspect of tattooing. That kind of traveling carny salesman community thing. That's what I loved about tattooing and what pulled me into tattooing, and that's what I'm missing about tattooing now. Now
it's a different feel.
Yeah,
totally different feel now.
It's just
it's amazing how many people show up to work to tattoo clients and then not talk to them.
Oh yeah, the one thing that gets me is the headphones or the earphones, and they don't talk.
Yeah,
like damn, who are you? Who do you think you are? I'm like,
what's crazy? You're really quiet over there.
I have kids out there. Last night I was having a conversation with James Tex about this.
But he doesn't remember it.
Hey, Clinton. We were going to unleash on the tattoo world. So.
I love it though. I wear headphones because of sensitivities or whatever, and then you see them out at the fucking bar posting pictures. It's like, where are your headphones? Yeah. You're in a louder environment now.
Yeah, right.
You have the headphones. It's like,
it's a different world, Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful what you say.
Have you ever been careful about
because now the customers have got the power with the reviews.
Yeah.
Fuck you,
if Rick hasn't been fucking canceled yet, we're all safe.
It is different, and for I'm really the old generation now. It's hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
I mean, even going from like the machine to now these pens.
Yeah.
Like, wow, they're great. Don't get me wrong, they're great. I use one myself, but it's so different.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you think about all the years it took to learn how to tune a machine and fiddle with them and all of that. All of that's gone now.
It's in a drawer now.
It's just gone. Yeah. All that experience, and you go, oh God! But I'm a better person for having to learn that, and I'm richer for it.
Yeah.
And I've got all that history. And as I die off, and as these guys die off, that's going to disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them might die before you. There's a whole lot of diabetes over there. Early onset.
For those of you kids, there's this whole group of people that are standing over here. Urging the phone. Come on, say some more.
Talk shit.
And all of that. Yeah, tattooing. I remember the first convention. We were at a convention in San Francisco one time, and there was these fucking idiots from Los Angeles, and they were spitting at each other. And then the European guys that I was drinking with, the next thing this fight started, right? It was this full-on brawl. Those days have all gone.
Yeah.
It's,
Not in Alberta.
Not in Alberta? No. I'm interested to see this
Any given weekend.
Even going to a convention where people had their photo albums out. And you could look and flick through the photo albums now. You talk to somebody now and you go, and they just say, oh, look at my Instagram.
Yeah, there's no, last one we went to Kelowna, there was no fucking photo albums, but there was just a bunch of pre-draws. What are these line drawings going to look like to the customer? Where's your portfolio to show how you're going to put this shit on a body?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a different world. And we've got to learn to live with it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. It's not their fault. It's just the way that it's evolving.
Yeah.
And as I keep getting told, I'm a dinosaur.
It's not like tattooing's gotten worse.
I actually had a conversation with a young tattooer from Australia. We were talking about really good tattooers. There's a young kid down there called Adrian Hing. Okay. And do you know him, James? Yeah. He's incredible, right? He's a little different, Adrian, but he's such a nice guy. So he comes to my shop and he wanted to meet me and I wanted to meet him and we're having a bit of a conversation and I said to him, oh, well, there's a really good steakhouse up the road. We'll go and get something to eat. And he just looked at me blankly. And I was like, what? Do you want steak or do you want something else? And he's like, I'm vegan. And I'm like, Oh shit! Oh man, what have we done?
Where are we?
Where are we going? Right. Do you like rice? Can we eat rice? I'll take you to the Thai restaurant around the corner.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was having a conversation with Adrian. We were talking about the way things are evolving, and the one thing I absolutely hate, looking at you, is I hate face.
Oh, I know. I actually read that somewhere. Yeah. No one's going to actually bring it up during the interview.
Well, I brought it up.
Tam, he had that in his.
Yeah, I was in town.
Yeah, and I just
as he rolls closer to you.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to be looking over at anybody, but like the people that you look up to and you really admire in the business, and then you see them do a face tattoo, you're like, oh no, please don't.
Yeah. I remember I think it might have been a post where you were like saying you would never hire somebody.
Yeah.
If they did a face tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I stick by it. I don't, I know it's a different world, but I think there's still got to be some of us. But interestingly, when I was talking to Adrian about that, and he just said to me, like, oh, it's just because you're old. And I was like, oh, really? That's the way you look at it? Not that, I might have some sort of morals about me. Because the thing is, today, there's so much talk about mental health.
Yeah.
And if you're that person that's looking in the mirror every day and you're not happy with yourself, and then you go and get this done,
oh, yeah.
and then you're looking at yourself even more, and you're thinking, like, why am I getting stared at? Or I think it's just going to,
for sure.
it's going to
amplify
everything.
100%. Yeah. I waited till very late in life. I wanted face tattoo when I was younger, and my mentor would not do it.
Yeah.
At all. And then I went for dinner. I went to Toronto to see him a few years ago, and I went out for dinner. First thing, I was saying something, and he's like, well, at least you got those face tattoos now. And I knew it. And then the next shot was that I used a rotary. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, no. So I get it. I definitely get it.
Yeah, well,
I judge people that have face tattoos. I have people come to my shop. They're like, I want to get a face tattoo. And I'm like, only retards get face tattoos.
Yeah.
This episode edited by Deadly North.
Even like, I remember, like, I had a friend of mine that was in an outlaw motorcycle club, right? And he wanted to get a certain tattoo on his neck, and I refused. He was a very close friend of mine, and I refused to do it. I said, mate, you're going to regret it. And he kind of argued with me, and he was a big, heavy hitter in the club. And I was like, but I'm standing my ground here. I'm not going to do it. And he wanted it on the neck. And he ended up leaving the club. And he come up to me later on, and he thanked me. He said, look, he goes, I'm glad you didn't do it. He left in good standing, no problems, right? But he said, I didn't want to walk around with that now, looking back. So I've always sort of stuck. That was something that Paul, because Paul wouldn't do hands or necks or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the difference now is that, or not even difference, but when you came in, the attitude towards visible tattoos was completely different.
Of course it was. Yeah.
And whereas now it's mainstream.
Yeah.
A lot more acceptance. I mean,
is it acceptance or just tolerated?
I think it's acceptance.
I think it's both.
Yeah. I mean, people without tattoos.
I think some people accept it and other people just tolerate it.
Yeah.
But you go into banks, people are tattooed. I mean,
yeah, okay. But would the bank put somebody in behind a counter that's got a face tattoo?
In my town, they had a neck tattoo.
That's not this.
Yeah.
No, but still, though, it's a change, right? Like,
it is a change.
So I can understand now why tattooers like myself are like, it's kind of fair game. I'll have a conversation.
Well, the other thing is too, but if you go back to my time when I was coming through, the guys that were heavily tattooed with their faces and everything like that, they were the guys in the corner looking very lonely because they thought coming to a convention, they were going to be accepted. But even within the convention, they were frowned upon.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't want to associate with that.
Oh, yeah.
And they were the guys that, you kind of looked at them and a part of me felt sorry for them, but I was like, man, you brought this on yourself.
I also think
some of the guys in like the 90s who were getting like the fake mocos,
the
dotted eyebrows and stuff.
I also think that it's how you carry yourself through life. So I bet you the guy with the full face tattoo sitting in the corner without tattoos would be the same guy sitting in the fucking corner.
Maybe.
But if you're kind of a gregarious person, outgoing, you have a smile on your face, people see past that stuff a lot.
Yeah,
Where do I focus?
yeah. I mean, but even you see the lettering above the eye, and it looks sharp for the first few months, and then it starts to blur off very quickly.
Yeah, and then they just look like they're really surprised on the one side.
Yeah. But anyway, look, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I don't like it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to employ anybody that would do it. Definitely not.
Yeah. Sorry, Ryan Gagne, you can never go work on the shop.
I don't know who that is.
That's awesome.
Johnny Hammer.
Yeah.
I
like that too.
Your face is tattooed.
Oh, my face is tattooed. Yeah.
There's a good, actually, there's talking about Australian tattooers. There's another young guy I forgot to mention was Matty Mooney. There's a young guy down there, Matt Mooney, right? And he's incredible, right? And we're quite good friends, and he has a young guy working for him that had a little tattoo. We were going out for dinner, and I was having this conversation, and now he's getting it lasered. He's
looking for a job.
Yeah, he's not looking for a job. But he's like, he goes, I really respect what you said, and I've thought about it, and so I'm like, he's a nice guy. I don't, but yeah,
I'll never tattoo my face. That was enough.
Yeah, I don't have hands. This is
you don't have sleeves.
No. There's a different time, different era. I mean, even just getting these back then was different for me. It was a big decision. I never wanted to really go. I remember there was a time when I was going to get my forearm done from Paul, and he talked me out of it. Do you remember the crawling tiger on the wall, the blue tiger?
Oh yeah, I probably have a version of it. Tigers in action.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I wanted to get that, and Paul's got no. You don't want to get that. He talked me out of it. But then again, Paul didn't like tattooing, after hours. So this was a big decision. Yeah. So it was. So times have changed, and people have changed. Their attitudes have changed. I get it, but I can't change. I'm just that guy.
Yeah.
And I won't change. I'm not going to bend the rules just to satisfy some punk's needs.
Yeah.
They want to get themselves on Instagram and get the likes. I don't care about that shit.
Yeah.
It's.
And you don't have to.
I don't have to. No, I'm actually lucky enough that I'm.
You're not desperate for clientele.
I'm not. No. And it's. I'm lucky, But I think at the same time I've worked hard to get where I am.
I think you made your own luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been blessed to meet a lot of great tattooers. Like Clint Danroth over there. Like guys like that. I've met. I've been lucky. But you create a lot of your own luck. A lot of people were like, "Why do you need to go to the States? Why do you need to take photos? Why do you need to do that?" It's got me where I am.
Yeah.
And I think probably more so than the work that I've done, it's probably the work ethic and the way I've gone about it that's got me where I am. Because I'm just a tattooer. I'm nothing special, and I don't do anything that's incredibly special. I do the same dragons, the same koi. I just do it probably a little bit bigger and maybe better than a few people, but everybody's catching up.
Yeah,
and that's fine. A lot of those people I've taught to do it bigger and better.
Yeah.
So
that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I'm proud of what but what I've left, or what I will leave behind. The amount of work and that. But I'm probably more happy and pleased with myself that the people I've met along the way and become sort of friends. This world that we live in, we're lucky enough to be part of. I mean, I haven't seen James for a long time, but you meet up and you still have that connection. Or Dave, or you guys, like. It's interesting that we get to do that.
Yeah.
We get to travel and meet great people. Yeah. Not everybody's great. People don't like me, and that's fine. That's interesting. I don't care.
They're assholes.
But they're not. Even in Australia, within Australia, there's this perception of me that's not real. But it started somewhere and it's just grown. I mean,
because you're an old tattooer.
And I've heard things like I was Horiyoshi's apprentice. That's not right. I don't know where that come from. That I'm a real prick that I won't teach. I've taught more people in Australia how to be better tattooers than probably anyone else, and that's a fact. You know, I remember one day a young kid walked into the shop and he had some drawings. He said to my wife at the time, you know, I want to meet Trevor, you know, and is it all right if I show him some drawing? And I got up, I went and had a look at his drawings, had a conversation with him. I mean, I'm not trying to big note myself here, but I'm just telling you the facts. I took a bit of time with him. I went out the back, grabbed some old stencils, photocopied them, went out and gave them to him. I said, practice this. Don't try and do all this fancy stuff. Practice this. And then bring it back to me. And I had a young girl working for me at the time, and she was sitting to the left of me, and she said to me, why did you do that? Why did you give him the time of day? You know, like, and I said, he walked into my shop with some drawings. Why wouldn't I give him the time of day?
Totally.
Yeah. You know, like he was respectful. He was just a kid he was me.
Trying to figure
it out, you know. He actually came up to me a couple of years ago and he thanked me, you know, and I was like, well, you know, and I've done that to quite a few people. Yeah, there's always the one that you just like, I don't want to, you know, just piss off, you know.
Yeah, of course.
But
yeah, and you don't owe them anything anyway.
I don't know, you know, but I remember what it was like to be that kid, you know. Yeah. There was no way anybody was going to teach me anything back then. It was very much a closed shop, you know. And now you go on YouTube and you learn how to tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. They don't need people like me anymore. They've all got it figured out from what I've seen, you know. So it's a big change.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Yeah. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How we feel about it.
You know, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be room for us, even with the new styles that are coming in. The pens, the fine line stuff, and that's a whole new chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm standing with Jack Root, and the latest trend, you know, you see these kids doing they've got the pens, they've got the fine line, they're doing these single needle or these fine line tattoos with a little black and grey shade, and they think they've reinvented the world.
I know.
You know, and then I'm standing next to Jack Rudy, that was like the man that brought this to the world, and these guys wouldn't even know who he is. Yeah, they're all these lettering guys. You know, they look up to somebody like, I don't even know who the latest letterers are. You know, they look up to that generation. But there's a whole generation behind them that brought that in, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's natural. I think that's just youthful ignorance, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, they've got more exposure now. They've got everything at their fingertips. They can look this up. They can have a look at it, you know.
Yeah.
But there might be too much information for them to go through to find the old history that was mostly oral.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. Anybody who wants to know any black and gray history, Tattoo Nation.
Yeah.
Right? Look up that movie Tattoo Nation.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll have something there to look at for sure. So
when are we going to get a retrospective or something on you, or a book or something with your...
The guys at the shop want to do, you know, they want me to do, like, because I've got, like, boxes of just, you know, drawings, and they want to do that. But I don't know about that. I don't know. Like, I got approached a few years ago about doing a book, and I was just like, nah. I don't think my journey's interesting enough, you know, because I'm just actually picking up from somebody else. Like, you know, I'm just picking up from Paul or from Mike or someone like that.
Everyone's just a link in a chain.
We are, yeah, I get it.
And it's
Yeah.
not interesting to you, but it is to, I mean, fuck, we're spending a couple hours because you won't stop talking. A couple hours. Your stories.
I'm fascinated. But it's just, you know, it's just the same stuff. It's just regurgitated. No, I don't know that it's that interesting. You know, it's
only because you existed in it. But to people, younger generations have no idea what it was like back then. So to hear about that stuff is fascinating, right? Like,
yeah, I guess
some of us not that far behind you are very curious about it too. But
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I don't know if somebody comes forward with a good book. Do you get a lot of money from it.
Good enough idea. No idea.
So, it was interesting, you know, because like when Evan brought out his book, you know, and I've seen his progression, and from what he started at, now he's got this sketchbook, you know, and I couldn't be prouder of the way he's brought that together. And I think he's jumped ahead of me. He's brought that book out, and you know, he's that guy. You know, he's that guy I was probably 10, 15, 20 years ago. So maybe, I don't know. Like, I remember when Paul bought the book out, the little book, you know. Yeah. It was a great book, you know. Buy it, Paul Jeffries. Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I'm not comfortable even doing a podcast, but, you know, you guys, you know.
No pressure here.
Well, no pressure here.
We just had a bunch of big Canadians block the door.
Yeah. No, it was sad. This is the first one I've done, really. So,
awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I've been asked a couple of times, but it's like
They were dinks and we're not.
you guys, probably, yeah. Face tattoos. So.
I got a tattoo. You just can't tell.
You know, that's fine.
Wow. He can't grow hair over it.
Oh, really? Oh, shit. Look at it.
Look at it. That's what my dad said when I was born.
It's fun. It's been a great journey. Like I said, I'm blessed. You know, I've traveled the world, met great people, met a lot of friends. You know,
yeah.
I'm lucky. You know.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
No, it's fine. You know, like
tons of fun.
We'll do episode 2 another day. You know, so.
That'd be awesome.
The True North Strong Tattoo Book. This is a massive tattoo encyclopedia of Canadian tattooers. 350 pages. It's an 11 by 17 coffee table format. Shawn and Dan worked tirelessly to get this thing out, and sadly it never made it to print, so it's available for free download at theholdfastsocialclub.com and championtattoo.ca.